What first sparked the idea for the Caring Company?
Well, I worked for many years, more than a decade, on something that's called liberated companies. And the idea there is about the unconditional care, I can say it about companies' employees, so they become engaged and do their best for the company. So it's basically focused inwards on the relationship inside the company. And I asked myself once I finished this project, and it became quite successful and quite known in the particularly in French-speaking countries, but also in the world. How about the outside? How about the relationships that companies have with their customers, their suppliers, the local communities? And that's where from came this work when we realized what kind of relationship-based, we'll discuss it on transactions, basically self-interest in transactions. And I'll give maybe quickly a definition of what is the caring company that we'll be talking about. And this is the company that provides unconditional care to the members of its business ecosystem, which are customers, suppliers, the local community, and it does it, it's very important, through its core business processes. So that is the caring company.
So the Caring Company challenges the traditional profit-first mindset. What's the biggest misconception about business and value creation that you most want to change with this book?
Well, companies have many reasons to focus on profits. These reasons are historical. That's how companies function for centuries. They're economical, or there's basically everything that is taught in economies is about the profit maximization or shareholder value maximization. However, there are a lot of also critique, right, about the way companies are run. And so our approach is try to show that there's maybe a different way to run a successful capitalist firm. Why would they want to explore this different way of running a business? I think that if companies look, for example, at their customers, are they willing to come back? If they look at their suppliers, are they truly dedicated? Are they ready to go what is called an extra mile for them? If they look at the local communities, are these communities supportive? Are they ready to do a lot for this company so that these companies stay and prosper? And the answer for most of them is not. And so the question is whether there's a different way, and the caring companies show that there is a different way. So when you take this unconditional care of your customers, they are much more loyal. They're willing to come back. When they come back, they're willing to eventually perhaps buy more of your services. And even if they're not buying more of your services, they are willing to talk well about you to some others. So they become what is called promoters, right? If you talk about your suppliers, if you are not trying to squeeze the best price from your supplier, and if you don't get the price, then you simply switch to another one, they are perhaps become extremely dedicated, and they are ready to do things for you that they will not do for some other clients, right? Deliver earlier if you're in emergency, right? Or maybe to do extra work to finish something that is not functioning. And regarding the local communities, it's perhaps today the relationship is very much what we call transactional. If you want us to open a plant, if you want us to open a supermarket or whatever, we need from you, right, some subsidies, and we will consume some local resources, right? And if economically doesn't work for us at some point, we're going to go somewhere, maybe even offshore, right? So if you take care about the members of the local community and you say we're here to stay and we're here to create wealth, we're here to create the being behaving like, I would say, good citizens, right? In this very civic way, contributing to the local community, then probably they will be much more supportive, and businesses need the support of local community. So that's the idea behind. That's why I think businesses could be interested to look at this different way to run, again, a capitalistic firm, not social business, not something mixed with between social and capitalistic. It's companies that we study are normal businesses.
Considering, I guess, how things have been functioning, why do you think the message of the Caring Company feels particularly urgent and important right now?
I mentioned, and we know that recently, it's not recent, right? But recently there's a lot of criticism of business. We dedicate almost a chapter on these issues that talk about the social and environmental damages that hundreds of businesses, we run the tables, right, with exact cases and the number of victims and the damage and so on, and also ethical scandals, though it's not on a massive scale. It is summarized perhaps by the key criticism that businesses are very good in privatizing profits and in socializing risks and damages. So today there is a need and there is a search of trying to find ways to run business not being in this type of paradigm.
You spoke a little bit about the research that you've done and what you'd looked at. Can you share a story or an example that you think best captures the power of the Caring Company model?
Well, our book it's important to understand it's not a theory devised here sitting in my office with my colleague. We had an intuition that there is a different way to run a business, and then a little bit like Charles Darwin on Beagle, right? We went to study, to see such a company that they've heard that they potentially are doing that. And so we did it with several dozen companies of all sizes, types, and geographies on 3 continents. So we have many, many examples, and these examples are in the book. I'll give you one of a Japanese leading large pharmaceutical company that's called Eisai. They're known for providing drugs for neurodegenerative diseases, Alzheimer, Parkinson, and so on. And the CEO, whom we met, interviewed, Haruo Naito, when he became the CEO, he faced an important scandal of the secondary damages of drugs. And he didn't want to live through that anymore. He suffered even psychologically from that. In Japan, it's very important, your name and so on, the shame that is on you in the society and so on. And he started to question what is the purpose, why they are doing what they're doing. And most of the people would say, okay, we'll develop drugs and we sell drugs. So, in Japan, they don't contradict, right? And then he would continue to question. And someone said, in fact, our purpose is to relieve the suffering of our patients and their families. And that rang strongly with him, and he started to ask others, what do you think of that? And it was kind of validated by many other employees. And that became what they call the concept of their corporation. They don't use the word purpose, but it's the same thing, right? So once they validated this purpose, he started to ask everyone voluntarily, right, to rethink the way they carry today their activities so that these activities contribute to relieve the suffering of their patients and their families, not to sell drugs and maximize profits. It's voluntary, it's not an order. And we've seen testimonies and examples of some salespeople, and they don't understand what is it all about. He's there to sell drugs. What do you mean? And however, after some time, the initiative started to come, and I give you one striking initiative, for example. At that time, they had something like 800 salespersons. And they usually organize this kind of congresses for the conventions, right, for the physicians, and where they talk, and then basically there are samples of drugs, right? So it's not free lunch, right? And so they analyzed, and they saw that one of the main reasons why Alzheimer is not well treated, it's because it's not well diagnosed. Particularly the rural general practitioners are not good. They think that the person is old, has some memory troubles, so it's just kind of like senility, right? So they have memory troubles. And they don't diagnose well that it's really Alzheimer. Not everyone that has memory troubles has Alzheimer's. If we want to relieve the suffering of these patients, we need to help doctors to be better in diagnosis. So let's do a convention and ask top professors from Tokyo to come, I think in Hokkaido, in the north of Japan on this island. And they organized this convention. And the top professors came there, and they explained the real art of science and that. And so this all general practitioners, they were extremely grateful after this convention, and they came to the organizers and said, thank you very much, thank you, that was really helpful. And so where are the drugs? Where are the samples? And they say, we didn't bring any samples. That was not the purpose. The purpose was to help you. And by the way, we also established a helpline, so you can call us at any moment if you have questions, if we can refer you to someone or provide you some latest research, or even advise you with the medication that we don't have, but maybe our competitors have. So they started to do that. And I have more examples of sales. I'm talking about salespersons because they're mostly economically driven, right, individual. They have examples of R&D people, managers that totally rethought the way they work. But the result is, in fact, that's very interesting, and it connects to our finding that these companies, the caring companies, are more economically prosperous than their competitors who are profit-focused. And here, once you have these physicians who think that you really take care of them and through them to the patients, they think of your company very differently than the competitors. And so when they need drugs at some point, they say, if I have a choice, why not to go to this company that really cares about us, that they invest their efforts, energy to help us without trying to get anything. So there's a goodwill, and so that's one example, but I have many, of course, examples.
Was there any other interesting finding or insight that came out of looking at all of these different companies, that a particular one that you want to share?
The one that I mentioned, this is the biggest insight, because when you go into this type of research, and that may be a misconception, right? But it's totally legitimate, is that these people are socially oriented, these companies, they're about social value, they're not about profits. It's almost like non-profit, almost like social business. They don't care about, I don't know where the money comes from, but they don't care about money. It's not true. What we found, that because they're real businesses, they understand that profit is necessary, right? But they treat profit a little bit like we would write it in the book as a metaphor, like a water. You don't live to consume as much water as possible, but you need water to live well. So they say they need a certain level of profitability because you need to invest, right, to prepare the future. You need also, obviously, to reward the shareholders that take risks and that eventually founded this company and so on, but not to maximize. So profits are, it's very interesting, the status in these companies. Profits are both the consequence we discussed, right? You have more loyal customers, you have more dedicated suppliers, you have more supportive local communities. All that combines to the economic prosperity. So its profits are a consequence, not a goal, a consequence. And on the other hand, it's a constraint. So they say, okay, what is the level of profitability that we need in order to make our company sustainable. And they say this is the level, okay? But we want to reach that level. But above that, that's not the purpose. The purpose is unconditional care. That's why when it costs them money or they lose on some action with regard to the customer, we try to do unconditional care. It doesn't, like a little bit, I'll give you one metaphor that we use with friends, right? You don't invite a friend and say, okay, come and spend the weekend at my house unless you don't cost me too much. Or unless I get a return on my investment in you during this weekend. You don't do that, right? You invite your friend and you say, feel like at home, and kind of like you host him and you unconditionally try to take care of him. So that's what they do. It almost seems impossible in the world of economics. And even Adam Smith said that that type of relationship would be ideal, but he didn't believe that businesses, you can have maybe dozens of friends, but you can have thousands or tens of thousands. We found that the leading banks, leading chain stores with hundreds of thousands, millions of customers can establish this type of relationship they would do with a friend. In some companies, but they call among themselves inside, we have a company like hospitality company for seminars, they call inside their customers friends. Mm-hmm. How many friends are coming today? It's in language that has some kind of symbolic importance, right? Treat them as friends. Don't treat them as persons that you'll try just to get money from them and give them what's in the contract.
In your previous books, you explored trust, freedom, and empowerment in organizations. Mm-hmm. How did writing this book deepen or shift your thinking on these ideas?
It's related in a very specific way. When we started to study these caring companies, we obviously quickly realized that those who provide this unconditional care are employees. It's not enough for the CEO and top management to initiate this transformation. It's the employees have to change. Remember, I mentioned this story about rethink your activities. So the person who sells, the person who provides a service, the person who manufactures, who does research and development, all these persons, they have to change the way today they operate. And so how do you bring it to this change? Obviously, our work on trust, autonomy, all these aspects that how do you revamp management systems helped us to understand what's going on in these companies. I wouldn't say that all caring companies are liberated companies. Some of them are, like Handelsbanken, the leading Swedish bank, but many go in that direction because you need to trust your employees to provide unconditional service.
Coming to something actionable for members of the ESCP community, for the next generation of business leaders, especially for those studying at ESCP, what skills or new ways of thinking are needed to accelerate a shift towards what you call a more caring economy?
I'm trying to do it in my classes, and I think that we need to expose our students to the diversity of perspectives and this perspective that there is a different way, a very different way to run a business, I think is very helpful. And it's in particular to our students who are Gen Z, and research shows, and I studied that also a little bit, that they are looking not only for purpose, looking for a positive purpose. So coming to business, if you want eventually to attract or them, right, to contribute the way they want to contribute, I think it's very useful for them to understand that businesses can operate differently, that they don't have kind of like resignation saying, yes, I have these values, I have these ideals, but now I have to accept that business is business, and it's all about profits and shareholder value. And I can't find my place there. And so some of them then will say, okay, I open my little restaurant or my bakery or whatever. And no, there are real, serious, big, medium, impactful businesses who are very profitable, but don't function in order to maximize profits, but in order to maximize what we call the social value for their customers, suppliers, and the local community. And if they know it, perhaps they can find such companies or help even to make the leaders of these companies to become aware. And it happened to me as a professor here. Some of my former students, even during their training, their internship, already had a conversation with, of course, those would be startups or small size companies, with the leaders and saying, we studied that with Professor Getz and there is this book and so on. And they contributed to some change in their company.
That's good from the perspective of the organizations and how they can attract talent. But in terms of our students, what are some of the values and skills and things that need to be cultivated within them to, move towards more care?
I would say stay curious, open up your mind, and don't give up on your values. Don't think like it was for a very long time. It was a saying that you need to leave your brain when you enter the company. Don't forget to pick it up when you leave, right? Today, we can say that people say check your values when you enter the company. And don't forget to pick it up because you need it at home, right? With your friends and so on. No, you don't need to do that, to think that there is no way to contribute because they study here, they study business, right? They invest a lot of years, energy, they acquire knowledge, they acquire some experience because they do internship, then they start their careers, okay? And it doesn't mean that you cannot leverage all this because this is extremely powerful in order to contribute to what we call common good. You can find in the business world such companies that do that. I hope that people who will read this book and my students also, they will share our conviction that if you want to make, it's kind of like very cliche, the world a better place, right? The leverage that business has is perhaps the strongest leverage in the world among all the actors. Businesses are stronger than governments, everyone knows that. Talking about businesses, we know, right? Those who are profit maximizers, they're way stronger than social business or some of the companies that are trying to balance profit and social and environmental value. It's called B Corp, which is good, but this is a very marginal phenomenon. We talk about thousands, we're not talking about tens of thousands. While only in the United States, there are 33 million businesses, right? So if you talk about this, all these businesses, their power to change the world for better and contribute to common good is extremely strong, and perhaps is the only way to seriously find answers to the challenges of our contemporary world.